this stream going. It seems like I'm having problems. What's good, AO? Hold on. Let's see. All right, what's good, fellas? What's good? What's good? All right, so I'm about to get this going here. All right, today is part 2 on the role of men and women and how feminism is against the laws and will of God. And just so you know, I will be going through the I'll be using the Bible to bring up these references, as well as bringing up the scientific aspects behind these references pertaining to the role of women today. So we'll be starting off today with Genesis chapter 2, verse 18 is where I'll start next. I'm going to try and make this as short, as sweet as I can. Got a lot going on, and but I'm going to try and bring this to you. All right. I'll be reading from the Amplified version of the Bible. All right, so here we go. Verse 18, and it reads, "Now the Lord God said, it is not good for the man to be alone. I will make him a helper suitable and complementary for him." So right there, it just is stating because Adam at this time, he was by himself. He's the only man, the only human in the garden at this time. He was by himself, and he felt it was not good for him to be by himself. Well, actually, he was the only one in the garden at this time, the only living being, complex living being. You know, you had plants and stuff, but even the animals had not been created at this time. It was just him, along with the plants and vegetation at that time. He saw that it wasn't good. He had no companion, no one to talk to during this time to make the day go by. But if you go to the next verse, 19, it says, "So the Lord God formed out of the ground every animal of the field and every bird of the air, and brought them to Adam to see what he would call them, and whatever the man called a living creature, that was its name." So that just goes to show when you look into the scientific aspect of men and what we're created to do, we have we want to name things, we want to look at things and see how they work and try to understand them better. The volume's low, okay. Me adjust the gain. Is that Watch Gamer channel? Is that volume better now? Hit me a 1 in the chat if the volume is better. I got the gain. I had the gain down a little low. Just my mic here. Is that volume better now? All right. Okay. Hopefully that's better for y'all. Let's see. Let me adjust this. That better? All right. I think it's a little better. Okay. Now, as I was saying, he the scientific aspect of men, we want to be able to name things. You look at even in when it goes to outer space, all the names that we give certain constellations and other stars, and as well as the naming of ships, the naming of satellites and different things that created for the purpose of. Speak up a bit more. Okay, I'm gonna turn this up. For the purpose of that we name for whatever purpose we have them for. We create them and name them to identify them. It's just it's a part of our it's part of our DNA. It's part of our genetics to want to know what they are, to identify them and how they are in respect to us. All right. So moving forward to the next scripture, this one will be verses 21 through 23. And it's still reading from the Amplified Version, and it reads, "So the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam. And while he slept, he took one of the ribs and closed up the flesh at that place. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from the man, he made into a woman, and he brought her and presented her to the man. Then Adam said, 'This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man.'" Now, this is importance. This right here is important to note that that she was created from man, from the she was created differently. So whenever we read and we understand, we talk about feminism and the fact that the idea is that they say that women are equal, they're equal to men. Well, right here is showing that she was created differently, while Adam was created in a different manner. She was created in a different manner. So we're not created equal, and we're not created for the same purposes. She was created from the bones, from living tissue, from him, to be able to understand him better, to have that emotional connection, to be able to perform her duty, to be the suitable helper that he needed to be, that he needed her to be, rather. And that's why she has these feelings, these emotions. She comes from this living tissue to be able to understand him better, to better suit his purpose and his needs. All right. So now be going to chapter 3. Be going to chapter 3 and verse 16 next. This is explaining the curse. This is explaining the curse that they had that was brought upon them for eating of the fruit of the knowledge of good, eating from the fruit of the knowledge of good, and from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And it reads this, and I'll be reading from the Amplified Version on this as well. "To the woman, he said, 'I will greatly multiply your pain in childbirth. In pain you will give birth to children, yet your desire and longing will be for your husband, and he will rule over you and be responsible for you.'" Also in this Amplified Version here, it has in parentheses, "with authority." He will rule, and he will rule with authority over you. Because as a men, we were created to be able to rule with authority. We were created to rule with authority over the earth, and we should do so as such. What's going on, Mace? We should do so as such with our purpose. And you are created to rule with authority, because here's the simple fact: there is a pecking order spiritually, and it starts with the Almighty God Himself, then the man, then the woman. Uh, she is not equal. You are to rule with authority. Uh, it even says here, her desire and longing will be for him. Her desire and longing for this man is because he is ruling with authority over her. And that's how it's supposed to be when you're dealing, when you're having to deal with women in this matter, whether it be business. You see it's not happening in the church because, let's be honest, the atmosphere of the church is a feminist environment. It's made and everything is broken down in a way with feelings. Well, how we explain and everything is gone into about how it should feel, how this should feel, how that should feel. Men don't operate like that. Men are born to operate and created to operate off logic and a logical basis. And here's the thing. The only way to rule with authority is to set a standard and a code of rules that must be abided by. As a man, your life is your world. It is your country. And she is trying to apply for citizenship into your world. Let's take it for like this, okay? If we were to go to China, we can't take the rules that apply here and try and make them work in China. If you're not going to follow the rules in China, you end up in a prison camp. It's pretty much how it goes. So when you look at your world, at your life, you have a standard set of rules that she must follow. And if she does not abide by, she's out. That's how you set the standard. That's how it's supposed to be. That's how you rule with authority. Even though it says that you will, even though it says he will be and he will rule over you and be responsible for you. Here's a simple fact: if she does not want to accept that rulership, that leadership, she is taking into account to the fact that she does not want anything to do with the mandates of God if you are led by Him. So it's already showing that she wants nothing to do with that. So with birds of a feather flock together. It means that she wants nothing to do with the rule and authority of you as a man, designed and given to by God. She's not worthy of your time. Now moving forward, I'll be going into the book of Proverbs. Proverbs is one of my favorite books. It's got a lot of knowledge in it, and for practical use in living. And we'll be going first into chapter 15, verse 17. And I'll be reading again from the Amplified Version. All right, here we go. Verse 17 reads like this: better is a dinner of vegetables and herbs where love is present than a fattened ox served with hatred. And basically all this is stating here is that it is better to have a plain presented. It's better to have something plain and presented, not all sweet, not lavish, and not all the frills and of everything. It's something to have something just raw and plain that you know is given to you out of love. You know, somebody giving you constructive criticism. Someone giving you constructive criticism for your benefit because they want to see you be better and do better. That's what that means. And then the fattened ox served with hatred. That is where basically they're telling you lies to soothe your ears, to soothe your soul, but while the whole time there's nothing to try and benefit you. They're serving you up. They're serving you up for the slaughter. It's a lamb to slaughter is pretty much what it is. They're telling you all these good things when really they hate you the whole time, and they're really poisoning you. That's their deal. You know what? Watch Gamer Channel on your question. The truth is that they're not really a God fearing Christian woman if they're doing that. If they're fighting, because here's the thing: women don't fight to be equal. Women fight because they want control. Um, when you read as to why Eve, when she ate of the apple, when she ate of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, when she ate of that fruit, it was because the serpent told her and made her aware of the simple fact that well, not aware, but he played right into, he watered the seed that was in her mind of her not wanting to serve Adam, her not wanting to be a servant to him or really even to God, her wanting to be in control and her knowing her place. Uh, Matter of fact, I can go back and show it to you, being you brought that up, Mace. Let's go here. And here it is, verse 2, Genesis chapter 3, where the woman, and yet the woman said to the serpent, we may eat fruit from the trees of the garden, except the fruit from the tree which is in the middle of the garden. God said, you shall not eat from it nor touch it, otherwise you will die. But the serpent said to the woman, you certainly will not die, for God knows that on that day you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. Knowing the difference between them is what it has in a special parentheses here. Because the simple fact is, before they ate of it, they didn't even they didn't know what good, they couldn't appreciate what good was because they had no knowledge of evil. It's like you got that old ex-girlfriend who you had to cut her off, things went bad. She goes through those slew of men, the carousel as we call it, and they treat her like the whore she proves herself to be to them, because she's jumping around from them. They treat her bad because she's shown no good enough qualities to be treated any better. So now she calls you back, wanting to be in your circle, in your time, in your presence, because of the simple fact that she could not appreciate how good she had it until she went through until she got to someone bad. It's just their nature. That's how they are. They cannot appreciate something until it's gone, until they do not have access to it. That's why when you're dealing with them, if you're going to deal with them, even in as far as the aspect of friends manner, you're not really even trying to deal with them, but in a sexual manner, but you have them around because you enjoy whatever it is, a conversation. They may have a fun personality that you just like and enjoy it. Y'all joke and cut up and have a good time. And here is the thing: they cannot appreciate anything you do not make them work for, whatever position you keep them in. So you constantly must make them work and earn the respect of your time. You never give it to them. They're like children. Children, they don't appreciate anything that they have not earned. You give it to them, it'll be torn up in 2 or 3 weeks. It's just how it is. But when you make them work for it, you make them earn it. They have appreciation for it because they had to put something into it that made it worthwhile for them. But now to get back to Proverbs. And this time I'll be going to chapter 21 and verse 9. All right. And right here it reads, it is better to live in a corner of the housetop than in a house shared with a quarrelsome woman. Contentious is what it says in the King James Version. Contentious, meaning, she's causing problems. She's causing drama. It's better to live on the roof, on the housetop. Better live outside the house than in that domain, on the inside of the house with her. That says a lot. What it's stating here. Shalom, Brother Lawrence. Good to see you here. Good to see all y'all here today. Uh, you know, your life should not, you should not allow drama into your life. Uh, you should. It's not worth it. It creates stress and problems and negative mentality and negative emotion in your life. It only drags you down mentally, spiritually, and it also plays a toll on your body physically. It causes health problems. How many people do we know that are going through physical health problems because of stress? Uh, it takes a toll on your body. It takes a toll on your mind. If it takes a toll on those, it takes a toll on your spirit, just your overall being. So it's we have to be careful with who we allow to be in our spaces, who we allow to be into our life, and who we allow to have access to our time. Because the one thing I like to tell everyone, the most valuable resource you have is time, because of the simple fact that it's the one resource that once you've used it, you cannot get it back. You can't get back time at all. So, moving on to the next verse, we're still in Proverbs, and this will be at verse 19, and it goes on to read, "It is better to dwell in a desert land than with a contentious and troublesome woman." This is going on to read, I mean, all the better places that it is to be than to deal with a woman who is causing trouble, who's just up to no good, and it's going to lead up into why usually they cause it, other than the simple fact that they're emotionally unstable beings. They're all over the place. I know many of us dealt with the woman when 1 minute she wants this, then 30 seconds later now she wants something different. you know they're all over the place. They change as much as the wind does. The next scripture is the 23rd verse. "He who guards his mouth and his tongue guards himself from troubles." So we all know that a contentious woman, they do not guard themselves. They do not guard their mouth. They don't guard their tongue. We have men like that don't do that. When you guard yourself from troubles, when you think about what you speak and why you're saying it, like the scripture read earlier, when it said, I believe that was verse 9, when it said, no, that was, think about another one, that was 15 and 17, when it talked about the fattened ox served with hatred. That is what it's getting at right there. They're serving that fattened ox with hatred when they're not guarding their tongue, but whenever they release it for it, whenever they're speaking directly in a manner that is for your benefit, and they're actually telling you, being direct and upfront, not in a manner to scold, but to just let you know something where you messed up for your benefit, even though it doesn't sound good. And it's, them, and it's coming from a place of love. That is someone who has guarded their tongue. They're just telling you something for your benefit. But you have others who do not, and just scold, that just their tongue is sharp just to cause contention and trouble. Next, we'll be going to chapter 25 and verse 24 in Proverbs. All right. And it says it again. This is repeating another one. It's better to live on the corner of a housetop than in a house shared with a quarrelsome, contentious woman. This is it's trying to get this message into the mind of men. How much better, how bad it is to be in the presence, to allowing a contentious, troublesome woman into your time and into your space. It what it does, it basically, it eventually cuts you off from your duties, from your purpose, from the Almighty, which that's something that we do not want. You do not want your focus and your priorities, your purpose to be taken away. You can never make them a priority. Your priority, centered around the Almighty, is what you're supposed to keep as your number one purpose. That is your purpose. That's your priority. And then your next priority after your purpose that the Almighty is giving you is to yourself, to take care of yourself. Because if you don't take care of yourself mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, you can't do that purpose. You can't take care of that purpose if you aren't taking care of yourself. So that's why, when we talk about men doing their own thing, that's why taking care of yourself is the most important thing. That's the aspect of it, to take care of yourself so you can take care of your purpose. You never make them a priority, because in reality, what I read to you in Genesis chapter 3 about ruling over her, in Genesis chapter 2 also about being created for her, to be the helpmeet, for her to be the helper suitable for your purpose. Her purpose is to make sure that your purpose is happening, that it's on track. That's what her purpose is supposed to be. All right. Now, moving forward to chapter 31 of Proverbs, and we'll be starting at verse 10. I made a note to go through 31, but I probably won't go through all of it. It's a lot of meat to take on here, but I do want to take on enough of it to get the mind flowing and to open it to if you are dealing with women, if you choose to, how you are to vet them, as far as how to keep them in your space. Like I said, even if it's just as a friend, and mutual benefits, whether it doesn't have to be sexually, but just for women that you choose to have around you in your space, in your time. They can be women, that you're kin to. They can not be. They can just be just friends that you have seen as beneficial throughout your life, that you have known. And that's what this part 2 is about, on how to vet them, to make sure that they're continuously showing these qualities, because if not, they are contentious women that you do not need to deal with, period. All right, be starting to, hold on. I think it went to the wrong chapter. Hold on. Yep, I knew it did. Chapter 31, verse 10. Okay, here we go. All right, and I'm still reading from the Amplified Version. And in the Amplified Version, this is titled Description of a Worthy Woman. And here's the thing, what it's not going to tell you is that for her to be worthy, she must constantly be doing something, constantly, to be seen as worthy. I mean, 2 or 3 times, every now and then it don't cut it. She's only doing it then, and then the rest of the time she's doing unworthy stuff. That's someone you don't need in your time, taking up your space. It reads like this: an excellent woman. Who is he? Who can find her? And in parentheses, for the description of an excellent woman, it says one who is spiritual, capable, intelligent, and virtuous. Most of them, a lot of them, we find quite a few who are intelligent. Very few who are capable. Some who claim to be spiritual, they're really not. They're really not. They know how to manipulate it to serve as, try and make it as their own, and make God as their own personal genie, but that don't work. And how many can we truly say that are actually virtuous? I mean, let's be honest. How many can we say that are actually virtuous? That's why it says, "Who is he who can find her?" And in reality, you shouldn't be finding her. She should be searching for you. It should be her trying to prove to you that she is all of those things. Next, it goes on to read, "Her value is more precious than jewels, and her worth is far above rubies or pearls." And that is true just because of the simple fact, if you can actually find one, that is a rarity. And we all know, if we don't, we should know that when it comes to jewels and to value, what determines value, the one thing that determines value is rarity. And to find that woman with those quotes, with those qualifications it was talking about, woo we can't really say that I know of any personally, maybe one. I seriously doubt that, because they can, some I know, they've made good mothers, but they're a terrible partner for a man. And that in itself speaks a lot. And I've known few, and not very many are that good of a mother in that respect as well. We'll go on to verse 11. "The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain." Ooh, boy, I mean, I can't I can't think of any that I could trust with her to gain, to increase, which that's what they're supposed to do. He's supposed to be able to trust her to be able to increase his purpose. But how many can we actually do that with? That's why if they're not proving their worth consistently, constantly, you have to get rid of them. That you can't have them wasting up your time and your space, because your time and your space can be better served doing your purpose. Moving on, "She comforts, encourages, and does him only good and not evil all the days of her life. She looks for wool and flax and works with willing hands in delight." It means she's working to work towards that purpose of his, whether it's giving him time to work on his purpose, or doing something personally to add to his purpose. That's what she's supposed to be doing. And then going on, "She is like the merchant ships, abounding with treasure. She brings her household food from far away." And this can be meaning this statement right here. It can be meant several ways. It can have a literal meaning of food and treasure. Treasure as far as clothes, anything that is of use to the family, to the husband, to the kids, and to herself. She's working to bring her house everything of good and of need. So it can mean also in a form of knowledge and spirituality, enriching the family, being that emotional support in there. When the man is sick, or when the children are sick, she's bringing them exactly what they need. That is the food. That is the abounding treasure that she is bringing to them, working to nurse them back to health and to take care of things while they are down and out physically at this time. She also rises while it is still night and gives food to her household and assigns tasks to her maids. Now, when you read this, she's constantly busy on this purpose and giving food to her household. Food is anything, knowledge, that literal food, taking care of things around the house, whatever is needed for this purpose, and taking care of the family. Whatever is needed is food. and then assigning tasks to her maids. At that time, that if they had enough money, they had maids or uh, servants to help them with those tasks. If not, then when you look at it in the sense of today's time, the maids would be her female circle, her circle of friends. That would be her maids. And then you can judge how the woman is by her circle of friends. Uh, if they don't do tasks like we are explaining, they don't have any of these qualities that I've just read, you know that she does not have them either. She's only faking it to make it. That is the number one thing that women do. They fake it to make it, and they do this constantly, which is why we talk about the bait and switch. The bait and switch is faking it to make it. That's all it is. It's not who they really are. So that's why I say you have to make sure that she is constantly showing you things that are worthy of your time. All right. Next, she considers a field before she buys or accepts it, expanding her business prudently. With her profits, she plants fruitful vines in her vineyard. All right, now this right here, what it's talking about, it can mean it in a literal sense of the fact of she's considering every option of the simple fact before she buys anything. We talk about how women waste so much money by buying frivolous things that aren't needed. But this woman here, what it's speaking about, this woman that is worthy, she is considering every option before she buys it. What money will be needed for certain necessities at the home, if there's enough for her to be able to spend on this, whether this frivolous thing or whether it's needed, what's needed first, the priorities of necessities, so that with her profits she plants fruitful vines in her vineyards. And what that's meaning is she's planting seeds that will grow fruit, that will bear fruit. And that it meant it can mean it, but it didn't mean it in a literal sense here. What it meant was she is dropping gems of knowledge of truth that will bear fruit. That is the plant. That's the profits that she's planting there in her vineyard. That is, and what it's meaning is, she's teaching her children knowledge and truth that will show up whenever it's time for them to grow up and be able to use them. She equips herself with strength, spiritual, mental, and physical fitness for her God-given task, and makes her arms strong. So a woman who is obedient and disciplined to her husband, she's equipped herself with strength. Her God-given task is to help him in his purpose. That is her God-given task. That is it. That is the task she's been given, to serve his purpose. And it makes her strong to be submissive to him and to help him take care of that purpose. That is a strong woman. I think I'm gonna go. I know I'm gonna go one more for sure. I'm going to verse 20 in this chapter 31, skipping over about another 2 there. It says she opens and extends her hand to the poor. She reaches out her filled hands to the needy. Now, see, it's talking about a woman who is extending her hand to help someone, to give someone who is in need of something that they need. How often do you actually see that in your life? A woman actually giving something to someone in need, even if they may not need it, but giving it to them, just giving freely. I was talking with Brother Lawrence before. I have a cousin, and her mom, the only lady I can think of now who still cooks and gives away plates for her community. And when I say community, I mean, the circle of people who she who she allows into her home, and she still does this even after her husband has died. I can't think of another woman that I know who does that. Whenever I was everything was down with the virus and everything, it stopped up a lot of stuff, and my car was down during this time, and for a period of it, and I wasn't able to get around like I wanted to because my mechanic was backed up. She sent a plate by the way of a good friend of mine who I consider a brother. And how many women do you know are seen that actually do this or still do this? Like I said, I can only think of I've only noticed one. And when I think about it, I do have some other friends that, if I go over there, they're going to cook and do this, but their roots are foreign. They're Mexican, and she come from Mexico. So whenever you go over there with them, they gonna feed you. They're gonna do it. But as far as in American culture, it's pretty much unheard of and unseen now for a woman to do that. I forgot. I can't forget about this. Verse 21. She does not fear the snow for her household, for all in our household are clothed in expensive scarlet and wool. They're clothed, and this is her. Oh, let me keep going. No, that's good enough. She basically what it's saying is she's giving this knowledge, this information to her family, to the children. That is the clothes that she's giving them to protect themselves and to protect themselves from the elements of the world. That way, the snow, that is the world, that is the cold, that is the evil. But the knowledge that she has given them, that is expensive scarlet. That's for them. That's the clothes to protect them from the world. That knowledge that she's given them, and the wisdom is how they apply the knowledge that she's given them. It takes experience to be able to learn that knowledge. Usually, you have some, very few that are just born with that wisdom, born to be able to access it. Some people try and keep going with the knowledge for years, and it seems like they never get any wisdom. So that statement, with age comes wisdom, that is a statement of possibility, as I like to say, not a guarantee, because how many young fools do we know turn into old fools? That does happen. So we have to keep that in mind. But also moving forward, here we go. Let me see if I still want to read here. I think, I do have one. I do have one or two more verses here, and I'm going down here. I'm still in Proverbs chapter 31. But this next one, I'm reading from verse 30, and this is how it reads: Charm and grace are deceptive, and superficial beauty is vain. But a woman who fears the Lord, and what it means here by fearing the Lord is reverently worshiping, obeying, serving, and trusting him with all filled respect. She shall be praised. Now, what it is saying here, it's pretty much self-explanatory, really. But charm and grace and superficial beauty, they're used for vanities. They're used for evil. They're used to do things that are not of good, that are not connected with the Lord. Now, they can be used in a manner that is beneficial to the Lord and to his services. But most of the time when you're dealing with these women, it is not going to be. But it says here, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Reverently worshiping, obeying and serving. That shows how respect. It shows the Almighty that you love Him by obeying and serving Him with respect. That shows it. Uh, and the other way she shows it is if she chooses a man that is of the Lord, obeying and serving and trusting Him. That right there shows that she loves and respects the Lord. She loves and respects the Almighty, because the man that she has chosen that is of God, she respects and obeys Him. How many women can we say that you know that do that are an embodiment of that? All right. Moving forward here, I'm going to go to Ecclesiastes, and this will be chapter 8, and we'll be going, I believe, verses 2 through 5 is what I'll be reading here. This is very essential here. It's going off what I just read pretty much. It's piggybacking off that to show. And it reads like this: I counsel you to keep the commands of the king because of the oath before God, by which you swore by loyalty to him. Do not be in a hurry to get out of his presence. Do not join in a malevolent matter, for the king will do whatever he pleases. For the word of a king is authoritative and powerful, and who will say to him, what are you doing? Whoever keeps and observes a royal command will experience neither trouble nor misery, for a wise heart will know the proper time and procedure. In parentheses, it has appropriate procedure. So, what it's saying here, because of the command of chain of command, the Almighty creating man to rule over, in his absence, in his physical absence, the man is supposed to be the representation of God. So if she chooses a man who is truly of God, his wisdom, his guidance, and his direction is supposed to be coming through him, is coming from God through him. So that's why it says in verse 4, where it says, the word of a king is authoritative and powerful, and who will say to him what you are doing? Because if she's truly chosen a man of God, she doesn't have to question his authority. Only reason she should question is to get a better understanding of how to better serve his purpose. Whoever keeps and observes a royal command will experience neither trouble nor misery. See, that's why women are in misery, because they did not keep a royal command. They do not want to serve it. They don't want to obey to that command. That's why they're in misery. So to put it as simply as I can put it, whenever Eve ate from the fruit of the tree of knowledge and good and evil, he put that punishment of misery on her. And the only way women can be content is to obey those royal commands from that man of God, to keep it, and she won't have misery. And then where it says, for a wise heart will know the proper time and procedure. If she's wise, she will know the proper time when to ask, to question him on his authoritative command that he has given her. She will know the appropriate way to do it as well. It will not be from a place of contention. It will not be from a contentious heart. It will be so she can understand, or so he can reflect on the command further. Some commands may not have been well thought out, or she just may not have an understanding of them. But but if she has a wise and obedient heart, a caring and loving heart for that king, for the man of God, then she will know the proper time and how to question his command, so she can better serve that command. Moving on. Next, I'll be going to 1 Corinthians. This is one of my favorite books as well. Paul is one of my favorite. Probably, yeah, I would say he's my favorite, and then Solomon as far as writers of the books. And we're going to chapter 14, and I'll be starting at verse 33, and we be going through verse 40, which is pretty much the end of the chapter. All right. 33. And I'm still reading from the Amplified Version. Excuse me. All right. It reads like this. For God is not a God of confusion and disorder, but of peace and order. As in all the churches of the saints. All right. Written at verse 34 goes on to read, the women should be silent in the churches, for they are not authorized to speak, but are to take a subordinate place, as the law says. If there is anything they want to learn, that in parentheses it has, that is, if they have questions about anything being said or taught, they are to ask their own husbands at home, for it is improper for a woman to talk in church. Did the word of the Lord originate from you, or has it come to you only, so that you know best what God requires? If anyone thinks and claims that he is a prophet, and it goes on to explain what a prophet is, a true spokesman for God. But if anyone thinks and claims that he is a prophet or spiritually astute, let him recognize that the things which I write to you are the Lord's commandment. If anyone does not recognize this, he is not recognized, and being recognized, and he is not recognized. He's not recognized by God. Therefore, the believers desire earnestly to prophesy, and do not forbid speaking in unknown tongues, but all things must be done appropriately and in an orderly manner. So what that's basically saying here is that God, first and foremost, God is not a God of confusion and disorder, but of peace and order. So what it's saying is, if you are dealing with a contentious woman, she's not serving him. She's not serving God's purpose, because he is a God of peace and order. So she does not follow his commands, being she is contentious. She is following another's command. And when we read further, it says, as in all the churches of saints, which is God's people, the women should be silent in the churches, for they are not authorized to speak, but they are to take a subordinate place, as the law says. Women were not allowed to teach. They weren't allowed to scold anyone. When it talks about doing things in a decent manner, it was talked about earlier where I read, where the proper place and time and the proper way to say what she needed to say. And here's the thing. The proper way was that the women corrected women and girls. The men corrected the men. The women did not correct men because that was above their rank. But they had the authority to correct other women, but it was about the proper place and time, because women have a want to start confusion because they want to be seen. They want that attention. They want to be heard. And the church is not, in the church is what he was stating here. The church was not the time for that. So the proper way to do things was to take that woman off, or that child off, and correct them then away from the sight of others, is not to disturb the teachings that were going on. That's what the law was. When it says if there's anything they want to learn, they are to ask their own husbands at home, for it is improper for a woman to talk in church. So what it was talking about there, if there's anything she has questions about, she doesn't understand, she is to ask her husband at home. She is supposed to pick a husband who can read and understand this. And if he can't understand, she asked him, and if he can't understand, he's supposed to go to a man that can and is not going to give him the bull crap. Not going to your televangelists you see on TV who are only in it for the views and for the money, but someone who is truly concerned about speaking the word and how it's supposed to be, and how it's supposed to be taught, the truth of things. And here's the other thing too. Now, if this woman is not married, that means at that time she had her father to answer to. He was her guide. So she would go home and ask him away from the church. And he was supposed to give her that knowledge for her to understand. But if she does not have a father, that means she's supposed to ask the pastor or whoever their spiritual guide or their spiritual leader is for that knowledge outside of the services, away from everything, is to not distract from the purpose and from his purpose, which is to be teaching at that time. If anyone thinks or claims that he is a prophet, a spiritual student, and let him recognize that the things which I write to you are the Lord's commandment. All that is saying is that it is the Lord's commandment for women to not be teaching men and to not disrupt the teaching of the church at that time. It is the Lord's commandment. It wasn't coming from Paul. It was coming from the Lord. And how often do we see women disrupting church? It may not always have to be during service, but it can be things that are done. You can see and feel what's going on and understand that, they're doing things that disrupt and impede service and impede the harmony of what is supposed to be a sacred place. And it says that anyone who does not recognize this is not recognized by God. It means that you are not serving God's purpose. If you don't recognize this is to be true, is to be the law. And I'm going to go over this later in a later stream, post or whatever. But it was a verse. I can't remember. I think it's in Matthew where Jesus said he came to fulfill the law, not change it. There were only a few minor things that were adjusted to, that were made amended, and but the law, overall basic law, the 10 Commandments were not changed. He was the way to fulfill them, because he was the only one that could actually do it in full. 39 goes on to say, therefore believers desire earnest to prophecy, and do not forbid speaking in unknown tongues. Basically here, look, if you don't know what you're talking about, don't speak it. If there's something that you don't know, you can't be afraid as whoever you are to tell, hey, look, I don't know right now. Let me research this. Let me study this. Let me get guidance for somebody else to where it can open my mind to give you the correct answer. Because it's never good to give them the wrong answer, leading them in the wrong way. That's why it goes on to say after this, but all things must be done appropriately and in an orderly manner. That is the will of God. Lastly, I'll be the last book I'll be going through today is First Timothy, and I'll be starting with chapter 2 and verse 9. And it reads like this: Likewise, I want women to adorn themselves modestly, appropriately, and discreetly, in proper clothing, not with braided hair and gold pearls or expensive clothes. Basically, what Timothy was talking about here is how women were the attire, what women were wearing to the synagogues to attract men. The house of God is not supposed to be about that. It's supposed to be about the message. So he's saying she's supposed to be plain. Now it's different. It's not about so much maybe adorning themselves with gold pearls and expensive. Well, yeah, it will be some expensive clothes, but now it's more about tight fitting clothes, showing off cleavage. Short skirts, as to entice men and take their focus away from the message which they are supposed to be learning about when they are at church. 10 goes on to say, but instead adorned by good deeds, which is helping others, as is proper for women who profess to worship God. Now that's a powerful statement there. Adorned by good deeds, doing things that are of God. For other people, for the service of God, as is proper for a woman who professes to worship God, meaning a woman should be adorned by her deeds. She should show that what she does in her daily life, it should show that she truly worships and fears the Lord, respects him. When you see her doing things, she should be doing things that God would be appreciative and pleased of. If she's not, she's faking. A woman must quietly receive instruction with all submissiveness. It goes back to that contentious woman. She's supposed to receive that instruction, not mouthing. That's what it means by quietly, not mouthing off. With all submissiveness, meaning she's willing to do it without any complaints. I do not allow a woman to teach or exercise authority over a man, but to remain quiet. It's got in parentheses, in the congregation. She's not to teach over a man. She's not to teach men anything, but women and the children, that's different. And even back then, she was to teach the girls while the men taught the boys. How many churches do you know of with women teaching, that are the pastor teaching men? It's different strokes for different folks. I can tell you, it's not me. I don't need them teaching me because, for one, the woman is not logical. She is emotional. We understand and learn things differently. So this is why she is not meant to teach men. She can't teach him anything logical and beneficial for him to be able to lead, because of the simple fact that she doesn't want him to lead by her nature. She's going to fight it. And it's not becoming of a woman who is supposed to be a woman of God to try and exercise authority over a man. It's not a trait becoming of a woman of God. Goes on 13 to say, for Adam was formed first, then Eve. And it was not Adam who was deceived, but the woman who was led astray and fell into sin. She was led astray by her desires to be greater than God and control everything. That's why she ate of the fruit. That's what it was talking about, her being deceived. Adam was deceived too, but she was first deceived. The difference is she was deceived because of the simple fact she ate of the fruit because of her desire to be God. Adam ate out of it because of love for Eve. He did not want to see her die alone. And that was his fault. 15 goes on to read, but women will be preserved through the bearing of children if they continue in faith and love and holiness with self-control and discretion. They will be saved through the pain of bearing children if they continue in faith and love. She is supposed to, the pain is supposed to teach her a lesson. It's supposed to teach her the dangers of life. She's supposed to understand that through the bearing of children. It's supposed to increase her understanding of her punishment for being insolent, basically, for wanting to rule with authority over God and man. That's what the pain of childbirth is supposed to teach her. But if they continue in faith and love, through faith and love and holiness, they will receive their self-control and discretion through that faith and love. They will do it. I got the next chapter is, I'll be reading chapter 5. And it'll be verses 11 through 16. And this will be the last one for the day. But refuse younger widows refuse, in parentheses, it has to enroll the younger widows. For when they feel their natural desires in disregard of Christ, they wish to marry again, and so they incur condemnation for having set aside their previous pledge. When it's talking about here, the previous pledges, they pledge to not marry, a pledge to be widows until their death, in service of God. But what he's saying here is their natural desires. She's going to have a natural sexual desire for a man. Then it is best for her to go ahead and marry again, and find a man of God and marry again if she cannot continue with that pledge. So it goes on to read, now at that same time, they also learn to be idle as they go from house to house, and not only idle, but also gossips and busybodies. Parentheses has explaining busybodies, which says meddlers in things that do not concern them, being in other folks' business, talking about things which they should not mention. So I want younger widows to get married, have children, manage their household, and not give opponents of the faith any occasion for slander. Some widows have already turned away, talking about turning away from the faith, to follow Satan. If any believing woman has meaning widows, if any woman who believes in the Lord has any widows that are dependent on her, they're living in her household, she must assist them according to her ability, and the church must not be burdened with them, so that it may assist to those who are truly widows, those who are alone, all alone and dependent. So what it's saying here, talking about women with idle time. This is why I read to you earlier about the woman who was like a merchant ship, who was working for the household, working for the purpose of God. if she's doing so, she don't have idle time when she's working, because idle time causes women to gossip, to be busybodies, running from house to house. But now with with this technology and social media, they doing it all over social media and everybody business, telling everything, causing drama, causing problems, being a contentious woman. So that's why he was in here. Timothy was saying that he wanted younger widows to get married, to get married again, to keep them from becoming those women with idle times, going around gossiping about other people's business, to keep them from having idle time, to keep them with a purpose that is serving of God. And I believe also it was talking about women who did not have, widows who did not have children. But he wanted them to have children, to give them the way to take away from that idle time. That way they'd have where they have a purpose. Managing the household is a purpose. And that is how she is serving that man of God. And he's talking about some widows here have already turned away from the faith to follow Satan. Those women gossiping, those widows riding the carousel. That's them turning away from the faith, from the Lord, to follow Satan. And if any believing woman has any believing woman has dependent widows in her household, meaning widows here, that she must assist them. It's talking about women that, that were considered, I think that are possibly looking at turning away. She must help them. She must help them because they are in her household. And it says, according to her ability, the church must not be burdened with them because they have other burdens to assist. They have other widows who are true widows who need true guidance. But that's all, brothers, that I have today on this part 2, which is on the role of women. I just want to say thank y'all for being here today. The truth. I think well, they're widows, Brother Lawrence, but what comes into question is their true faith. That's what comes into question, their faith in this text, and whether they really truly want to be serving the will of Christ, or whether they want to follow the way of Satan. That's what I read that it's saying here. I don't know if you're meaning the true definition of widows by, I guess clarify that question for me a little bit, could you, Brother Lawrence? I don't know if you meant whether their husbands died through natural means. Okay, you got it now. Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad I could provide some clarity on that. All right. But I just want to say thank y'all, gentlemen, for coming to the stream, for listening. Thank y'all for subscribing. Also, I do want to put in here, if anybody ever wants to donate, it'll be gladly appreciated. I'll put my Cash App in here. Let's see. I'll put it in the chat. I know I put it. I think it's at the link of my videos. I believe. If it's not, I can put it in there. But that is my cash app. You know, the cash symbol and tip eyes and summer. If anyone is ever interested, I just want to say I appreciate y'all. I appreciate the support. I appreciate subscribing. If you ever think of any questions that we have in here, um, just feel free to ask them, and I'll do the best I can to answer them. I don't know it all, but I what I do know, I will impart. I appreciate y'all, and may God be with y'all.